can guarantee that if it weren't for that, the world would not know the name Kanye West. The dust has settled on jeen-yuhs. Hopefully you've watched it, had time to absorb it and take it all in, because there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this video, obviously. Let's get into my top 5 jeen-yuhs moments. So I put this one up early because, let's face it, who doesn't know about the confidence of this guy? But what I found really interesting was that moment he was talking to the guy in the audience. I think it was at the launch of the Kanye West Foundation. He was asked about overconfidence, and he just cannot comprehend why the world thinks that overconfidence is a bad thing. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because what he's saying is basically being overconfident means that you back yourself to do anything. And he says, I am the greatest, and you should feel that way about yourself too. How's that for motivation? Everyone seems so concerned with Kanye West's ego. And look, let's face it, he's already calling himself a genius at the start of episode 3, which is in like 2005. But can you blame him? Firstly, it's Kanye. Secondly, after all the setbacks he's had in the industry, no one giving him the time of day, the car crash which almost killed him, and of course gave us Through the Wire. After all of that, he goes and wins 3 Grammys, including 2 off of his debut album, The College Dropout. So that's Best Rap Album and Best Rap Song for Jesus Walks. By the way, he received 10 nominations that year, so if Kanye thinks Kanye is a genius, who am I to argue? We reach a point in the documentary where fulfillment becomes quite a strong theme. So Kanye's in the studio around Jesus is King, and he's basically explaining how he feels like he's reconnected with God, and he's found this newfound mental clarity that he hasn't had basically since The College Dropout. So he's talking about the new album and how it's not going to be anything like rap music from back in the day, saying we've exceeded that. Kanye's almost moved past that hunger and drive to prove that he's the best, because in his mind he's already done that time and time again. He doesn't need to keep going over the same ground. Yeah, he always wants to make the next album better than the last one, but there's a clear shift in focus towards other people. He's saying things like he's not going to be happy until the world is satisfied, and that he wants to see a world with no purposeful errors, no killing, no ill will. And that if everyone helps everyone, then life is better for everyone. It's like he sees it as his responsibility to make the world a better place. And to be honest, he was kind of speaking a little bit like a prophet, and almost very Kanye-like tones, like he's specifically here to do God's work. And this goes some way to explaining why he ran for president. He says all the things that you would want to hear from a politician, or the things that you would hope to hear, at least, from a politician. But you can tell that with Kanye, it's coming from his heart. It's coming from a real place. So then, I just teased it, but let's get into Kanye's presidential run in 2020. Now, at the time, it felt kind of funny and very Kanye, if I'm honest, in terms of that ego persona that he's so famous for. But the documentary puts a different spin on it. Now, it's admirable that he wants to see the world in a better place, of course it is, but ultimately we see the impact that his bipolar has on him in that moment. Now, to be honest, his initial campaign was kind of disastrous, if we're being real. It basically gave the media everything that they always crave when it comes to a Kanye West story. It was unconventional, it was shocking, it was chaotic. It was basically, like I said, all of the low-hanging fruit that the media love from Kanye West. But hearing him discuss that incident, it makes sense. Firstly, he was talking about abortion, which is always a polarizing topic. So whatever he said about it, it was going to be jumped on either by the left or by the right or by anyone on the political spectrum. Secondly, the reason he was crying was because he was telling the world that his dad wanted him to be aborted. Obviously, that's going to be emotional. So yeah, it did look quite chaotic, but only because it was framed as a political space. And let's be honest, politicians for the most part come across as pretty emotionless. You might say that's what gives them authority, control, trust. Really? Because for me, that's just not human. And it's the humanity of Kanye that I really warmed to throughout this documentary. Look, I didn't agree with everything he said in that speech, but I found it way easier to identify with him as a human being. Hearing Kanye speak so openly about his bipolar is something that we should all be very grateful for. Understanding the mental illness from the perspective of someone who's suffering from it, well, really that's the only perspective that matters. They understand it better than you do, better than I do, And yet people are so quick to say, oh, they're not in their right mind. They don't know what they're talking about. And in the case of Kanye, it's, oh, Kanye's trending again. What crazy stuff has he been saying now? Don't you feel like the phrase crazy Kanye is one of those kind of media buzzwords that's just been about forever? But just because you don't understand somebody doesn't mean that what they're saying doesn't make sense. He says that he takes his medication to turn alien into English, and that he doesn't communicate in a way that people understand because it's the truth in a world full of lies. Now, I don't know about you, but I can believe that to some extent. I've got to be honest, there is one question that as soon as I heard it, I was like, that's Kanye. It was, have you guys ever been locked up in handcuffs and put in hospital because your brain is too big for your skull? Obviously, the guy is a wordsmith. The way he paints pictures with his vocabulary is what makes him so brilliant at his craft. Getting a small insight into bipolar disorder from someone who's so skillful with the words that they use, it does feel like a privilege, and it should give you a lot of food for thought. Just before we get into the number one, I'd really appreciate it if you'd drop a like and subscribe just so I know that you've made it this far. And now for me, it's the star of this documentary, Donda West. Now, we all knew that the relationship that Kanye had with his mum was special, but actually seeing them share these real moments in real time together is what really took this documentary to another level for me. She was always bigging him up, always like rapping his lyrics back to him, and you could just see how proud she was of her son, giving him those little nuggets of wisdom just to make sure that he had that self-belief, but also making sure that he stayed grounded. Now, obviously there's the quotes that have kind of gone a little bit viral, like giants look in the mirror and see nothing. You can stay on the ground and be in the air at the same time. Now these are great sound bites, but for me, it's the wider ethos that attitude would instill in her son. I can imagine them having these conversations on a daily basis, like just naturally and spontaneously, just to make sure that he never lost himself. You could tell that from day one, she really was his biggest cheerleader, and I can guarantee that if it weren't for that, the world would not know the name Kanye West. Donda provided everything she could to make sure Kanye knew three things. Firstly, that he had an extraordinary talent. Secondly, that hard work and persistence will lead to success. And we constantly see examples of that throughout the documentary, with Kanye putting that into practice. And thirdly, possibly most importantly, always stay grounded. Donda passed away in 2007, and it just makes me wonder what the trajectory of Kanye's career might have been if she was still around. The constant media circus that surrounds him, it's felt for a long time like he's lost his way. And it kind of seems like without the grounding influence of his mum, and with so many new and influential people in his life, he almost became a little bit of a lost soul. And it's a bit of a shame, really. So that was my top 5 genius moments. Again, if you enjoyed it, please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And if there's any talking points that you think I've missed, feel free to stick them in the comments and let's get a discussion going. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.